You see eczema in a baby and nobody warns you this could lead to food allergy. It trains the immune system. This training is very important between age 0 and 5. It has been shown this can help prevent food allergy later on in life.
If I understand right, you're a pharmacist by training, but then
Yes.
you also have children with allergies. And those of us who have that in life know you get a lot of experience living with them. So how did you come to allergies come into your world, and how do you mix that with your professional background?
Yeah, so I'm a pharmacist by trade, I suppose. I have a degree in chemistry before that as well. So I like research and I like science. And then when I became a mother, I was introduced to the world of allergy through my children. So that's kind of what sparked the interest in allergies. Because my son, at 8 months old, had an allergic reaction, and that was my first, introduction to the allergy world.
And before that, is it something that didn't really cross your mind?
Yeah, no, blissfully unaware of allergies. I never had allergies myself. I never had eczema. I never had asthma, hay fever, nothing. So, it came as a real shock, I suppose. And when I gave him egg for the first time, I had a broad, I had a soft knowledge that there was allergens. To introduce egg into the diet is a bit tricky, and wheat and milk and eggs and all those kind of things. But I didn't think it was going to happen to me. I suppose that's with a lot of health concerns. That kind of comes up. That you don't think it's going to happen to your child. So when he ate the egg, he had an allergic reaction, and he had hives all over his mouth, and he was scratching on his neck, and they were all red. And I didn't know how this was going to progress because we had no antihistamines, EpiPens at that time. So that was really the beginning.
Yeah, I think that term blissfully unaware is very accurate until it hits you. I was the same, very blissfully unaware until age 19. Out of nowhere, I got allergies. Mine wasn't food; it was, seasonal allergies in the spring. All of a sudden, one spring, all these symptoms happening, and I just went to the doctor out of confusion, and he's like, "Oh, you have allergies." And I was like, really? No one in my family has them. I've never had them my whole life. I always thought it was something you were born with or would happen early on. So yeah, I find blissfully unaware is a very accurate term until the inconvenience of the symptoms, and you have to look into it more. But I know with food allergies, those can be much more severe, sometimes anaphylactic, and especially with young kids, can be, a different set of challenges because they want to eat everything. They want to eat what their friends eat. So where did it go from there? There was a hive reaction. Was it anaphylactic yet, or?
It was not anaphylactic, no. So I didn't know at this stage, but just to rewind probably 2 months previous to that or further, my son had eczema on his back, and it wasn't very severe. It was just, it needed some, he needed some help with it. He had an antibiotic cream for it, and it kind of cleared up. So his was not too bad, but I didn't know that this was the start of what is called the atopic march, which is kind of this progression of allergic disease from infancy to adulthood. It starts with eczema, and then it can lead to food allergies, asthma, and allergic rhinitis, which is, and hay fever is one of those. So I didn't know that was going to be the start of it. And if you have one of these allergic conditions, you're more likely to have another. So for instance, if you have eczema, you're 6 times more likely to have an egg allergy. If you have eczema, you're 11 times more likely to have peanut allergy. So there's a lot of, there's a big connection between eczema and and food allergy. So yeah, this was the beginning. Yeah, and I suppose um, yeah, at that time he didn't need, anything. It was just a mild reaction. But I suppose with food allergy, you never know which way it's going to go. And a lot of parents ask me this, so I've looked into it. But it's because when it starts with the eczema, there's a problem with the skin barrier um, of the skin. So there's a genetic factor, but there's also a lot of environmental factors going into food allergy. But because the barrier protein of the skin, it's called filaggrin, is not really working correctly. Usually the skin barrier is, tight like this. But because of the filaggrin defect, I suppose, there's little tiny gaps in the skin, like this. Um, and because of this, the food proteins that are in that are in your home, like egg, milk, everything that you're using in your house every day, these proteins can penetrate into the skin barrier and meet your immune system, unfortunately. And this kind of sensitizes and is the start of food allergy. Um, these little antibodies called immunoglobulin E antibodies are made, and they're very specific for the particular protein that they've met through the skin. So then they're like little policemen, and they're waiting for the peanut or the egg to come in, or to meet them, to meet these egg and peanut proteins. And when your baby then eats the food, that's why you have an allergic reaction, because the IgE is prepped and ready to react. So it's quite interesting, but unfortunate.
Very interesting. So if, say, hypothetically, there were no egg in a home, for example, a child had eczema, but no egg in the home, and hypothetically, no exposure, would then that child be less likely to have the egg allergy because there's no exposure, no potential entry of the proteins through a compromised skin barrier?
Yes, exactly. Like, people are allergic, and like all over the world, to the foods that are in their homes. If you come from, it depends on what country you come from. But yeah, a lot of unfortunately, peanut is one of those things that the dust hangs around for a long time in your home, in the dust. So that's why a lot of people have peanut, allergy. Whereas egg and milk and things like that, they can be denatured by heat, and but you're using them in your home all the time. You have them on your hands. You're minding your baby, which is perfectly natural thing to do. But unfortunately, when the barrier of the skin is degraded, this leads to problems.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to keep going down that road, but first I want to step back because I know, especially, mothers and dedicated parents, no matter how many times they're told, don't feel guilty, you're doing your best, they feel guilty. So, but I want to take a step back and say it's not, the root cause of this is not that there was egg in the home, for example, right? There's something that caused the skin barrier to be compromised, or for example, and then we were chatting a bit just before the camera started rolling, but there's, in a lot of cases, environmental factors that are really stacking up and causing people to have non-optimal health, and that's something that can affect pregnancy, a birth, a young child. So before everyone goes and throws every egg out in their home and peanut out in their home, can you speak to the part that comes before it?
There's no way to avoid that. I mean, it is to do. It is has a genetic component. So I mean, if it has been shown, though, if you can seal your baby's skin up when the eczema appears, if it does, as quickly as you can, this can help prevent food allergy later on in life. So unfortunately, the use of topical corticosteroids can help in this instance.
Okay, yeah. I had a guest on a few months ago. Her name's Jennifer Brand, and her expertise and focus is on childhood skin rashes. And she said something similar, but then she'll also work a lot with people on, the diet and any other supportive things to give the child the nutrients it needs so the body can repair itself and clean up. And it's a whole long episode, so I won't rehash it here. But it kind of a balance of managing the symptoms and then getting nutrients and just other supportive, extra supportive health efforts to allow the body to repair as much as possible.
Hmm. Oh yeah, I mean, the gut microbiome is very important for eczema and food allergy, and there's a lot of research gone into it. Um, for instance, the breastfeeding is encouraged because it feeds the bifidobacteria in your gut, and this is really anti-allergy. You want a lot of bifidobacteria, and antibiotic use early in life can kind of deplete the bifidobacteria a lot. So if you can, again, I mean, if you can avoid it, that's also a good way. But for myself, and speaking personally, like for my daughter, um, who's my second child, born with very extremely bad eczema, way worse than my son, all over her body, her face, like the back of her head. She used to scratch her head and bleed, and it was horrendous. Very distressing for her, very distressing for the family. And I focused on her gut health, and other things like vitamin D and omega 3s, and natural. Well, I say natural, but not drugs, I suppose, as a way to heal that eczema. But I did also use steroid creams, which did work as well. Um, and her eczema did heal, and we've never looked back. Like, it took about 10 months, I think, altogether, but we've never experienced eczema again. And she's grown out of a lot of her allergies. So we're, although there is a lot of research around these, the omega 3s, the vitamin D, the microbiome, the research is a bit, they can't tell if it's good or bad. With the probiotics, they don't know what brand. There's a lot of different strains of bacteria. They're not sure which one, but I found them to be brilliant.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges. I mean, with the research when it comes to drugs and medication, those are very tightly regulated substances, and the studies and influence can often be tightly regulated. So when a brand or chemical is found to work, generally they can create a lot of supporting evidence to show that. And the natural world, like you said, there are a lot of variables, even within probiotics. Like, that's classic in terms of in the natural health world. Like, there's so many options, and it's a very individual thing. Like, one can work amazing for one person, another person can take it and they feel no different. They're like, what is this junk? And then, vice versa, different strain, different brand might work for someone else. And that's one of the challenges with all health issues, really, not just allergies, but people that want to use more natural supportive support. It feels almost like you're throwing darts blindfolded, because you read something, try it, and maybe it helped this other person, maybe it helps you, maybe it doesn't, and it's just an exhausting march forward for people. But can you talk about that atopic march you mentioned? And I don't know if there's a good understanding of why this happens or why the progression goes the way it does, but I find that's very, very interesting. And a lot of people do see that progression of those symptoms, from the eczema to the allergies to the
Yeah.
asthma, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, as we spoke about there, the immunoglobulin E antibodies, which are produced, these are like a tiny percentage of your overall immune system, like 0.05% or something. And they were historically for bugs, like parasites. So when we were living on the cave floor and there was parasites around, and you needed to get rid of them. Like even mosquitoes for an example. If you get bitten, your leg swells up. There's a histamine released, and your body's trying to get rid of the mosquito bite or the mosquito. So this is the same principle really as that. It's only that your body doesn't know that it has ingested the protein, and it's trying to get rid of it like it's a pathogen. So it's swelling your neck, it's swelling the inside of your neck. It's trying to like push it out of your body. Your nose starts running, your eyes start running, you get hives, you get swelling, there's mucus in your lungs, you're vomiting. So it's trying to preserve the body, but it's a completely skewed result, or a response, because obviously it can be really damaging, and it can lead to anaphylaxis, unfortunately. Not as common, anaphylaxis is not as common, as you think. Like it's very rare, but also very serious. And if you have children with food allergies, it's always a concern. Living in the real world and having to let them go to play dates, and not having them with you. I think that's the scariest part of living with food allergies. And as they get older, you have to trust that you've taught them what to do, and ways to avoid having eating their allergen.
And when you say anaphylaxis is rare, do you mean the people who have that or could have that reaction? It's rare, or even within the allergies within. Let's just talk children with food allergies.
Yeah.
They may have allergies, but for it to go to the point of an anaphylactic reaction is rare, because everything you mentioned, like that is the huge concern, the fear of families with their kids is, will there be an exposure and an anaphylactic reaction?
Yeah, like there's no such thing as a mild allergy. It's just you might have a mild response one time, and the next time you eat it, you might have a severe response. So it depends. It's very unpredictable. Like there are factors that kind of predict the severity or impact the severity, like if you haven't had enough sleep, or if you're stressed, or if you have asthma already, if you have an infection, if you have a previous history of anaphylaxis, when you're an adolescent, if you drink alcohol or take steroids called non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, this can also lead to more severe reactions. But anaphylaxis, like if you ate the allergen, it's very unpredictable. I think that is the main point. So, but anaphylaxis is quite rare.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's rare that can happen, but even if you have a mild reaction one time, it's possible that anaphylactic reaction could be another time.
Yes, exactly. And the reaction might start off mild, but it could progress to a more severe reaction. But anaphylaxis and death from eating an allergen is very rare, even though you do hear about these cases, but you only hear about it because it's a very tragic outcome.
Okay, right. Yeah, very intense. And yeah, of course, when it involves kids, it's just terrible. So some of those things you mentioned that can affect it, like to me, I hear all that and I think stress. Like, okay, the more stressed the body is, the more strung out, the more burden it's carrying, then the more likely a more extreme reaction.
They don't really know, I suppose, but I suppose if the body is stressed or sick, it's kind of doing other stuff, and it's not as focused, so it mightn't be as good at it mightn't be as capable. So the reaction sometimes can be more severe in those cases.
Mm-hmm. Which makes sense, because even if you just looking at mild allergies, like a lot, at least in my opinion, I feel like part of it is the immune system is stressed because it has other things going on. Or, you talked about compromised skin barrier, or a lot of times there's leaky gut. either way, it's just the immune system has more to deal with than it normally would. And when it gets strung out enough, then you get these outsized reactions or reactions to things that normally would be harmless, whether it's food or, pollens that have been around for hundreds of thousands of years at least.
Yes, definitely.
What is your understanding of the genetic component? Because that when I got my allergies, that was one of the things that stuck out the most to me after going through years of cycles of like corticosteroids and basically managing it with something strong every time it came up, but it wasn't that frequent. At some point I was like, okay, I want to understand this better and get a more permanent solution. Like I can't just keep taking these every time it happens. And I'll never forget the doctor had said, we don't know exactly where these come from, but don't worry, you're in good company. He's like 10% of the US has allergies and we have a lot of tools to manage it. And at the time I think it was a little bit like something didn't quite sound right, but I just kind of went along with it. But over the years, I reflected more, and then again, like 3 years down the road of following that plan, I really was like, okay, I'm not. I'm not going to keep going to the doctor for these shots. I would go for allergy shots like every 3 weeks, and then if you'd miss, you have to come back and do them weekly for a while. And it's just, I was in my 20s, and it was just not the lifestyle I wanted. I'm like, there has to be a better way. But that genetic piece has always stuck with me. And as I've learned a lot more and myself just went down the more natural route and ways to support like leaky gut or just any of these stressors in the environment or in the body and the environmental stressors we're all dealing with now. I saw a change. I can't say it cured it, but I definitely was like, this would have been great to know 10 years ago at the outset. So ever since then, I'm a big fan of, I'm a big believer in epigenetics too. And I'm not saying that's the end all be all. Like many people have different opinions, including doctors, but I'm always like, what can I do to turn on the best genes and for my body to function optimally? And I found that there was a lot I could do. And so every time I hear, someone say, or a doctor would say to me, just, oh, it's genetics. I don't accept that at face value. Although I definitely acknowledge we all have different genes, and some people do have different propensities. But how do you see it? Either with your personal experience, or you may come across this with your work. I'm not sure.
It's unusual to get an allergy, I suppose, later on in life because it usually kind of starts with this eczema, not necessarily food allergy, but some eczema when you're young. Um, to become sensitized. But I suppose there's so many environmental things now that can cause havoc in the body. Like detergents are supposed to be terrible for your skin barrier, for your gut microbiome, and they can increase your chances of having a food allergy and allergies like you have down the road. What allergy did you have?
Well, the one that came on strong was pollen and grasses. Then I went for testing and they're like everything. Trees came back, cats came back. I was like, I grew up with dogs and cats my whole life. But as you're like as you mentioned the atopic march, like I think it's very possible I had eczema, just not a severe case. Cause I definitely remember skin issues and my mom giving me cream to put on and stuff. And I definitely had asthma later in life too, around the same time these allergies started. So, and it was also, I started university that year is probably a very unhealthy time in my life too, based on some of the decisions I was making. So it all kind of connected back to me like, yes. And I was on, a lot of ear infections as a child, a lot of strep throat, a lot of rounds of antibiotics. So classic thing, like you mentioned, like, yeah, we want to avoid antibiotics, but who hasn't taken rounds of antibiotics nowadays? So the allergies like did come on really strong, so that's why it stuck out. But I think there's a lot of risk factors and probably health issues before that, just not as strong and severe as when the allergies and asthma came on.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, there's a lot of stuff when you're young that can be protective, like having a dog actually has been shown to be protective against having food allergy. and eczema and all the asthma, everything, and a cat, not just dogs, but the cat as well can be beneficial because of the microbiome. Having an older sibling can be protective as well because, again, the microbiome, and it teaches the immune system that, it can come into contact with perceived threats and kind of get over it. So it trains the immune system, and this training is very important between age 0 and 5. There was a very interesting study there. The LEAP study just came out there this year, and it was about children who got peanut in their diet from 4 to 10 months of age until they were 5, like continuously in the diet, had like a 71% reduction in food in peanut allergy when they were a teenager. So this is part of the training because the children were eating the peanut. So that is kind of the recommendations now, to give your child cooked egg and peanut from 4 to 6 months if you can, or if there's a history of eczema in the family. And I suppose that's one of the things I'd love to get out there into the world, that message, because you see eczema in a baby and nobody warns you that this could lead to food allergy, and to start eating introducing these food as soon as you can. And it's not just give a little bit of the food and then never give it again. It's about keeping it in the diet all the time, so your body gets it's immunotherapy basically. It's your body gets used to it and learns that this protein is not a threat. It's food. So that was very interesting. Also, the vitamin D is protective. That's quite interesting. There's been quite a lot of there has been research about this. Some of it is positive and some of it is negative for vitamin D. But interestingly, if you live further from the equator, you're more likely to have an epinephrine auto-injector prescribed for you. And if you're born in the winter months, you're more likely to have been admitted to hospital with like a severe allergic reaction. So there's definitely a link there. Vitamin D is, very important for the immune system and the skin barrier.
Okay. Wow. So yeah, some things that can be done, which is always love to cover. So with the eating the foods, then the immune system and body is reacting to those proteins much differently than if it feels if they're entering through the skin and it's labeling them as a pathogen.
Yes, that's
Okay.
exactly it.
Okay. And are parents nervous about doing that? I don't know if you work with any or talk with a lot, but are they like, oh, I don't want anything bad to happen, and they're kind of weighing the fear of a reaction with the ability to desensitize? And those are pretty amazing stats you cited.
Yeah, it's very scary. Like for there are these tools to help parents, and they're called ladders. There's egg ladder, there's a milk ladder, there's wheat and soy as well. But we use the egg ladder for both my children and the milk ladder for my daughter. So this used to be just used for non-IgE allergy, which is more to do with the gut. But now they're being used more and more for IgE, which is the anaphylaxis type of allergy. And basically it is a sort of a immunotherapy, because you're starting on a very low, you're starting on a very cooked version of milk, for instance. And this like the first step of the milk ladder is a malted milk biscuit. So it's the protein is cooked so well that it's the shape of it has changed. So when you eat it, the body just doesn't really recognize it. It slips under the radar of the immune system. And it's a way to start the process of the body becoming used to having milk protein in the body and not reacting. So you increase the cookedness of the milk products as you go on. And if there's any reactions, you go back down a step. It's a very long process. It took a long time. Like my son's egg took a long time. My daughter, she was pretty good with the egg one. The milk one took a long time. I'm still doing the milk ladder with her. Like she's nearly 4 now. And we're nearly at the top. We're at like yogurt and cheese and, all those kind of things. But just drinking the milk, we haven't gone there yet. And she's just disgusted by it as well, which doesn't help. She's like, ugh, why would I drink that? Like, yuck. Because she's not used to it and she's never drank it before. So she's on the oat milk still.
Okay. Yeah. Oat milk's very tasty.
It's
so
nice.
It's tough competition.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
Regular
I like
dairy.
it. Yeah.
All right. So who is the ladder appropriate for? Is this only if a child has a reaction or test for IgE, or is this being recommended across the board?
Yeah, well, it used to be non-IgE only because they were afraid of reactions, I suppose, at home. For my daughter, she had a bad reaction to a yogurt that I gave her that I didn't know was yogurt in it. So she did a milk challenge under a hospital setting to see if she could eat the milk biscuit. So that was kind of the start of it, the malted milk biscuit, and she could, and she kind of passed. This is the food challenges are in the hospital setting are kind of the gold standard for reactions and seeing if people are suitable. So I'm not. I don't know how they decide who gets to do it or not. Like some people might not be suitable, so it's definitely very important to get personalized medical advice about that, whether to start or not. I was given the okay to start for egg and milk for both my children, and so safety first. So yeah, like it's great. I mean, you can feel a control with it, and the higher you get up in the ladder, the more it opens up the diet to different things for your child to eat, and also the fear goes down a little bit because when you can have baked milk, just everything has milk in it. You don't really realize that everything has milk and egg in it until you have a food allergy to these things. So yeah, once you get past the baked milk stage, you can kind of, breathe a little bit easier. And as you get further up the ladder, it's very good. It's a good feeling.
Yeah. Less to be concerned about and more food options. You mentioned something earlier about not being told things in the doctor's office or not knowing from the beginning. Are there other things that stick out to you that this would be really helpful to know? Or do you, now with your audience, do you talk to parents and families who just maybe the common things people get caught off guard by that would be really helpful to know from an earlier stage?
Yeah, I suppose there's a few things. Like, I mean, at the first sign of eczema, it would be very helpful to know that this could lead to food allergy, I suppose, if that message could get out there. And to keep your baby's skin, very supple and moist as you can. Like things like not putting creams with food in it on your baby's skin, also very important to know. And there's a lot of creams out there with food in the formulation. Like, for instance, with my son and my daughter, I used almond oil for their cradle cap and, on their skin, thinking I was doing good when they had almond allergy, both of them, probably from this. I mean, obviously, it's in hindsight now, and I don't beat myself up too much, but in fairness, they did grow out of that allergy as well. So if they kept it, maybe I would beat myself up more, but but to know that, because it definitely correlates. If there's wheat in a cream or peanut, this correlates to wheat and peanut allergies in the future. So don't use that. I definitely knew more with my second child than I knew with my first child.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's so much to learn. And then also there's just the reality of experience because you could read every book and out there, and then it may not go that way for you or your child. And so I found a lot of parents have to be quick on their feet. And, even when you're talking about the skin creams, like the obvious question, like, okay, what's the best skin cream? What's something that people listening we can give them, but it's
Hmm.
pretty clear. It
It
depends
depends.
on the person or the child what's going to work best. So a lot of people do have to do experimenting, trial and error, and do their best to navigate through it. So speaking of navigating through it, what are some of the most common issues to be aware of, or that parents and families of children with food allergies are gonna run into?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of practical day-to-day things that you kind of have to learn how to do as a mom or a dad with children with food allergy. Um, like how to use an adrenaline auto injector is one of them, and having to show a lot of people how to use it all the time, especially if you're willing to leave your child at a play date or uh, a birthday party or anywhere that you're not going to be. Um, so, yeah, that is scary because people don't really know. They're like, what? What is this? And obviously you're so used to it, but they have no experience with it. So you have to go through that. And that can be, quite daunting, but you do it because for the safety of your child. Then, things like going on holidays, you have to bring all the correct medication for your children. You have to you have to advocate for your child on a daily basis. Like you have to tell the people in the restaurant that you have the what allergies are uh, here that we have, and you have to show it's part of it is obviously communicating those allergies to the restaurant or the hotel or wherever you are, and part of it is showing your child what they're going to have to do someday for themselves. So yeah, it's bittersweet because you want to show them, but also it's sad that they have to ask, but they don't really know any different. So they go around going, "Where's the EpiPens?" So that's part of their normal life. So my son does ask me sometimes, like, "When am I going to grow out of this peanut allergy?" And that can be quite hard to hear because really there's nothing you can do.
And do you ever see people that, well, we use the term grow out of the allergies, or like in the case
Yeah.
of your daughter, there's a number of interventions or support you gave, and just doing your best and what you learned could be supportive. So do you see that people sometimes do either grow out of it or build their way out of it? And if so, is there any rhyme or reason, or is it still very individual dependent and difficult to say to a family or to a child, here, these are the best steps to follow? There's still kind of a number of different options, and everyone has to you know try them and find the path that works for them.
Yeah, I don't think it's definitely not clear cut yet. But I mean, if you the only clear cut one that's been highlighted there recently was the LEAP study in introducing egg and peanut and other allergy foods early on in life and keeping them in the diet. So that has been a proven way to prevent it. But other than that, it's very difficult to say who's going to grow out of it and who's going to not.
The immune system's so complex for
Yeah.
what we do know. There's so much we don't know. If people want to follow more of your work or hear more from you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I'm on Instagram. My title is the Allergy Pharmacist. So come follow me for um, tips and just allergy living life and the latest research.
Great. We will link to that in the show notes. So
Thank
anyone that
you.
wants to, just click on over and give her a follow. Emma, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Josh.